Hi, everyone. So I am here with one of my amazing previous clients, and I just wanted to share her story with you so she can be an expander for you and just show you what's possible for your healing and relationships and life. So thank you so much for being here and being willing to be an expander for other women who are struggling with relationships and dating patterns. So let's dive in. So what I'd love to start with is just like, what had you decide to do coaching?
So I had been divorced for about 4 or 5 years by the time I reached out to you. And I got divorced very young at the age of 25. And it was interesting because I felt like I didn't struggle dating. Like I'm a very social person, kind of a connector, and I was always kind of meeting people. But I knew that I had some unhealthy patterns. Like, for example, um, I was always kind of pushing away the men that I actually wanted to date in favor of dating men who were safe. And I'd give myself excuses like, oh, I like him, but I don't think that he's actually ready to settle down. And so after I watched 4 of those guys get engaged to the women they dated right after I pushed them away, I was like, okay, maybe I've got a problem. I'd also previously worked in like the matchmaking and date coaching industry. And so I was so informed. Like I'd read so many books. I knew so many of these experts personally, and just nothing was really resonating or feeling like it was getting to the core of what I was struggling with until I came across your content. And it was just so different from anything that I'd ever seen. I really didn't know what to expect, but I just had a feeling that that was kind of what I needed.
Yeah, and that's like pretty common with a lot of people who come to work with me is that like they're seeing these patterns and they're like, I've literally read everything. Like I have all this information, but like something just isn't clicking for me. So it's a pretty common experience for a lot of people. So what I'd love for you to share is just what kinds of experiences you have throughout our work together and just like tell us a little bit about the journey, what happened, what were some of the biggest things that started shifting for you?
Yeah. Well, one thing I'd really like to highlight is that these issues that were coming up in my love life were not just limited to that. They were affecting me professionally, they were affecting me socially. I had a lot of issues where I did not believe I could have what I actually wanted. So I would automatically go for the B or C choice.
Mhm.
And I would push things away. And so when we started working together, we uncovered a lot of things that I thought I had processed. But in reality, I had just compartmentalized and said, oh, I'm not going to deal with this. And that used to be a huge point of pride for me, is that I was always able to compartmentalize things and show up and get the job done. But I didn't realize until our work how much those things were affecting me and limiting me. So I think it was maybe 1 or 2 weeks into working with you that I met my now partner. And I have no doubt that if I had not been working with you at the time, that I would have let my anxieties kind of get the best of me and stop this relationship before it, became a relationship. Because that was my pattern, was as soon as I saw a guy that actually was, you know, a value match and I was actually attracted to him and I had an amazing time, I would kind of put him on a pedestal, assume that he would never really actually want to be with me in a long-term situation. And I would read too much into things that I shouldn't be reading into at all. And I think that that's easy for a lot of us to create stories around very minor things where we have incomplete information and get ourselves worked up about things. And so what was really helpful is every week we could work together and I could kind of have an outlet for those anxieties. And you would help me reframe what was happening. And I think another reason that was so valuable is birds of a feather tend to flock together. And so I have a lot of friends that were experiencing similar kind of patterns in dating. And so if I had gone to them and said, oh, this is what's happening, they'd be like, oh, screw him. It's clearly this. And so it's so important to have someone with an actual healthy view on these things, to help guide you through it. And so the more we went through that process, the fewer kind of hiccups I've had. And what's really interesting is I feel, I think back on our work often. I think it's been more than a year since I worked with you now.
Yeah.
But it's like these lessons are still kind of sinking in, and I can catch myself now when I'm falling into those old patterns, and take myself through the processing. And I'm just blown away. And I think those close to me are also blown away at how direct I am and how much easier things flow for me at this point.
Yeah. So what I'd love to hear a little bit more about is like what happened in your life as a result. Like what are some of the things that changed? Because I know you said there were like a lot of things that you had kind of just tabled and packaged and like put away. And so we kind of uncovered a lot of that stuff. And as we did that, what started to change for you?
So I mean, the first most obvious one is I'm in a wonderful relationship with someone that, checks all of my boxes. And I think not only is he, I think, such a wonderful person and such a wonderful match for me, but I think what I feel in this relationship is the ability to kind of comfortably grow and expand, which I think is a major, green flag for any relationship. And I feel very confident and comfortable discussing any kind of problems that arise, because they arise in every relationship. There will be some level of compromise, which is something that I normally would have just backed away from. So in my personal kind of friendships, I also had a pattern of, getting uncomfortable with something and just wanting to back away and kind of internally shutting off. And now I actually have conversations about what's going on for me internally. And I think as I've gone through those, kind of exercises of having those conversations, that's become a lot less scary. But my work and career stuff has been like on an absolute tear since we worked together. I was already doing some things that I was interested in, but I was still kind of making decisions from a place of like, oh, this is practical, this is what I should do. And I was still kind of backing away from the things that I really wanted. And another big takeaway from our work is I was having a really hard time figuring out what it is that I actually wanted versus what I felt that I had kind of picked up from other people. And I really couldn't tell that internally. And so that really helped in our work. But so I am now working, like I have a very high level role in this real estate development project that is kind of the project of my dreams, that it was never something I'd ever thought to do because I didn't think it was really a possibility. And I have a book coming out in 2 months.
What? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And
oh
so I'm like so excited because, I think something that we had talked about is I do have certain creative aspirations that I just kind of kept inside because I just wasn't comfortable. It didn't seem practical. And now those are all coming out, and I'm feeling very rewarded for like the more kind of creativity I put out there. I feel like the more, it's resonating, and that's an amazing feeling.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So you are now the second client of mine who has published a book.
Really?
So that is so awesome. Congratulations and on all of that, by the way. So I'm curious then, in terms of like how you feel about yourself, like what changed in terms of like your self-worth, your self-confidence, your self-trust, like inside romantic relationships, outside of that, because obviously this affects everything. But what were the biggest things for you?
I think that those, they're little at the time of like, instead of backing away and just kind of ending things when I'd feel anxiety and uncertainty, because of our work, like I would actually push through those things. And every single time it was a confidence builder that, oh, actually it's going to be fine. And often not only is it going to be fine, but it's going to be a better situation. And so just kind of doing those on a regular basis has allowed me to leapfrog and then make much bigger jumps. I think one thing that's really stood out is, I don't know why this happens. I think this happens to a lot of us, but I think who we are as children is very kind of authentically who we are and what we should be doing. And then we let years of whatever kind of distract us from those initial things. And somehow through our work together, I feel like everything I'm doing is like what I wanted to be and what I wanted to do when I was maybe 7 or 8. Which is a really interesting feeling. And that's kind of like the barometer when I'm making decisions now about what I should be doing. I'm like, would I have wanted to do this at that point? Yes. And like, this is kind of aligned.
Love that. Yeah. And I'd also love to hear a little bit more about just what has been different. You talked a little bit about like how the beginning stages of dating felt so different for you with your partner when you met him. What has been different about this relationship and just that whole experience versus like what it used to be like before we had done this work?
So my previous pattern was I used to actually give the analogy of it was like a horse race. Like I would date multiple guys and I would be like, oh, I'm never going to put too much into any of these. We're just going to see which horse like makes it to the finish line. But my barometer was who is putting in the most effort. And that led to people that, there wasn't necessarily the best connection or the best kind of dynamic between the two of us that led to, they were pursuing me on a very superficial kind of ego validation level. And I think the reason that we uncovered for that is like, to me, that's what felt safe. Like I knew like, okay, if they really, really pursued me, then like this person's not going to leave me or, they're going to really value me. But I would get into those relationships and then I would feel suffocated. I would not feel authentic because I think they were dating an idea of me. And that's the reason why someone pursues you. I mean, basically love bombs you, right? Mm-hmm. Is because they've got a fantasy that you're never going to be. And I think what was different with dating my current partner and going through the work with you is it was slower. It was very much a mutual kind of evaluation of each other's character. It wasn't just kind of jumping in and wanting, like I used to be very insecure with not knowing the outcome early on. And you helped me to be comfortable in that period and just accept that, hey, like this is part of the process. Mm-hmm. So I ended up in a relationship in which I feel actually very attracted and safe with my partner. And I believe he feels the same, and like it's much more equal, which is a much better dynamic.
Yeah. And that's such a big pattern to unravel and not easy. Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing your experience with us and for being an expander and showing what's possible. You really put in the work when we worked together. Like you showed up for yourself. I know it was uncomfortable at times, but you showed up for it. And something that I really noticed in you and in the clients that get the kind of results that you do is that you really took it by the reins and were like, I'm responsible for this. Like, I'm going to get what I need. I'm going to go do the thing. And of course, like it paid off for you big time. I'm curious if you have anything to just say to women, like for you, it happened in like 2 weeks. You met him. What were like the biggest things that you think might have played into why it was able to just happen so quickly for you?
I think the biggest thing is for me is like not giving attention to things that you do not want, because so often I see people, and I've certainly done this, where it's like, oh, it might be a long time before I find someone, so I might as well just kind of engage with this, entertain myself. And I think that is always keeping you kind of emotionally tied up in something that is not what you want. And it's just making it even longer that you're going to go through the process. And so really stripping that down and kind of removing anything from your life that, get honest with yourself and be more comfortable not having anything if it's not what you actually want.
Yeah. And I think something that you had done coming into the coaching was you would like cut off someone you had been dating who you were like, actually, I think this is not the right guy for me. And you'd actually cut it off, which was, I think, so important for you being available for something else. Yeah. So to close, I'd like to know if there's anything that you want to say to someone considering working with me or working in one of my programs.
I think so often when people are struggling to find the right person, which is a pretty universal experience, honestly. We like to think that it's like shopping and we're like, oh, we just haven't found the right person, or there aren't any of these right people in my area. But I really feel that so much of this work is internal, and that as soon as you go through these processes, those people just fly into your life. And so I don't even remember how many people I've referred to working with you at this point, like 5 or 6. And everyone that I've sent through you is now in a long-term committed relationship. And it's interesting because I make decisions like working with you, like very quickly, kind of very intuitively. And I have some friends that really wanted more of an explanation from me as to what it was going to do. And I was like, I don't know how to explain it to you, because you don't always know what you need. But I think everyone can benefit from breaking down these kind of, I guess, accumulated patterns and kind of rediscovering their kind of own internal compass. Because we all carry these things.
Thank you so much for sharing all of this. And I'm sure that there was so much value for anybody who is listening to this that they could get from just hearing your experience. And really, you are such an expander. And, I know for the people in your life too, like who you are and just who you become is just so incredible. And, I'm so happy for you and all the things that have happened for you.
Thank you so much. I think of you every week as I'm like going through these things, and I'm so thankful for the time we spent working together. So I'm very excited for anyone that works with you in the future or is working with you now.
Oh, thank you.